Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can we try that again? Good evening to everybody. A warm welcome this evening to what we know is going to be a very informative but important meeting. I'm very impressed with the large number of you that are here tonight. If I had to call a meeting, there'd be 20 of you here. So Mr. Simpson must obviously carry a lot more weight than I do. He does. The move from prep to high school is obviously a very, very important one. And it is best, I think, to have the information from the person who makes the decision. So to Shaun, thank you very much for being here tonight. And we certainly look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay. Although I'm going to give you a lot of information this evening, I think the most important part for me will be the interaction. So I would really like to take some questions at the end, and if you have any issues which I haven't covered that you'd like to raise at the end of the presentation, then please feel free to do so. I use the term presentation loosely because I'm not going to give you death by PowerPoint this evening. I'm just going to talk to you. What we are doing is we are filming this discussion so that if there are people who could not be here this evening, we'll be placing it onto our website, and then you can tell your friends and relations that they are well able to go onto our website and pick it up and watch if they want to do so. I'm still a little bit stunned by that comment that Tony made about carrying more weight than I've been on a special diet recently, and I've actually lost a lot of weight. My father was a minister in the church, and so what struck me is when I heard from various quarters that there was some concern about the admissions policy and boys from the prep school being admitted to the high school, I immediately thought of a verse from the Bible which says, "Do not be terrified by signs in the heavens." There's certainly, it might seem that there are changes, but they actually are not. So really it's business as usual, and if that is all you wanted to hear, then you're welcome to leave at this point. I understand that there's a strong and historical relationship between the two schools. There was a time when they were completely enmeshed, and they have since separated physically, but never in spirit and never in heart. Your boys, when they come across to the high school, are exactly the kind of package that we're looking for. In other words, they've been trained in the ways of Rondebosch. They understand what boys' schooling is about. We do a little bit of research into the schools that feed us, and just a couple of touch points. One of those is, how do the boys who arrive at our school rate in terms of their behavior, in terms of their academic attitude? So we pick up on homework not done, those kind of things, and their participation in the school. And consistently, the prep school ranks the highest in that ranking. And so we're very confident of the quality of boy that we receive from the prep school. So there is no concern there. I think the largest part of all of this, where there has been some concern, is that we live in an increasingly litigious society. That if people do not get what they want, and it's understandable, the reason why there are so many people here this evening is because schooling is a huge issue. I mentioned to our boys at a recent assembly that if you take the numbers as they stand, maths has never been my strong point, but I worked out 0.04% of the population will ever have the kind of experience that the boys have in our high school, in terms of boys' schooling, in terms of quality schooling, and in terms of the kinds of things they have access to. And I think that is a huge, sobering thought. And you can understand why people are desperate to get themselves into schools like Rondebosch Boys High School, but also the other Southern Suburbs boys' schools, perhaps not as much, but certainly those schools too. I'm going to give you a little bit of a historical background, a bit of a sense of where we are. I've spoken about the historical ties between the schools, and that is self-evident. But in terms of the application process, it's an overwhelming process. I've obviously have been a head of a school previously, And when we were sort of 35 over our number or 40 over our number in terms of applications, we thought we were doing fantastically well. At this point, we have well over 1,000 people coming to our open day. That's for 160 places which we offer in the high school. Then we have approximately 500 applications from people outside of this our school family. Obviously, we have the applications from the prep school boys, and then we have boarding house applications. So in total, we're looking at a number of around about 700 applications. 26 places in the boarding house go to boys in boarding. So of the 100 boarding applications, we give away 26. Of the 100, that leaves us with approximately 135 odd places to give away. We generally take around about 100 pupils from the prep school. So that means we've got around about between 45 and 35 places to offer to kids outside of the school. And for those 45 odd places, we have well over 500 applications. Now that in itself is already overwhelming, because you've got to go through the process of trying to weed out which boys you want, why you want them, what is it we're looking for exactly. And it has to be, to some extent, a selective process. And of course, people then start to ask questions as to why you chose that boy and not that boy. And there is going to be an element of subjectivity, and you want to try and cut as much of that out of it as possible. This year, we're going to run a scoring system alongside the application system, just to see how it works. And that scoring system will look at overall involvement in the school, leadership, social interaction or adaptability, which comes from the headmaster of the school that those boys come from, and then various bonus points for being an old boy, for getting well over 85%. And we're going to run this point system and see how it runs. Now, part of the legal process, looking at the Act, we are able to state where our feeder area is. We're able to say where we will draw kids from. So in our new application, in our new admissions policy, we've stated very clearly where those boys will come from in terms of the geography. Now, don't get panicky at this point when I read it out to you, because I'll explain it to you a little bit more as I go along. I understand that there are approximately 35 prep school boys at present in grade 7 who fall outside of the geographical description that we give. So we talk about, sorry, I'm just going to find the place. Residing inside of our service area at the time of application, our school service area consists of the suburbs bounded by the M3 to the west, Lansdowne Bowood roads to the south, the M5 to the east, and the N2 to the north of the school. Now, there's certain areas that we can stand solidly on in terms of if we are going to get pursued in a court of law. And one of those is if we state our area. And then if we take children from outside of that area, we are doing so with other criteria, not within those criteria. The law, as I understand it, doesn't allow us to turn boys down if they live within the proximity of the school. And so that obviously is already a safe haven, as it were. We're not allowed to turn boys down on the basis of academic performance, but there is a rider to that which I'll explain to you as well. And obviously we're not allowed to turn boys down because of financial need within that residential area. Now, as far as the academic performance is concerned, if there is a boy within a prep school, but particularly within this prep school, who is struggling academically, who is not able to make the grade academically, and he will have had a number of interactions with the school over a period of time, because every single boy who we turn down, we will have interacted with the prep school, with Tony and his team very closely to work out why we should do so. And for me, there are only three possible reasons why we would turn a prep school boy down. One is possibly that we are first of all expected to service the surrounding areas. Now, we've never had an experience where we've used up all of our places on servicing the surrounding areas, so we've always got a bit of leeway within that. The second is on the basis of behavior. If a boy has proved to be a behavioral problem throughout his school career or over a period of time, I see no reason why we should accept that boy into our school. It affects everybody who's in the system. And if they've been a problem in prep school, if we can take them out of the system and allow those boys the comfort and freedom of not having to deal with that individual's interactions, then so much the better. We have a number of very good boys who apply to the school, and I'd rather take a boy who I know is not going to give me a lot of headaches and trouble than take a boy who has been persistently a problem. Now, when we come to these individuals, we're talking about very serious problems. And we, as I say, we will have interacted with the prep school. They would have given us advice in this regard, and then we will have made our decision accordingly. There were one or two boys last year who had been difficult, but not hugely problematic. And in those cases, I didn't accept them in the first round. I met with the parents, I met with the boys, and I said to them, this is the situation. You show me that you can behave in the way in which we expect of a Rondebosch boy, and then we'll accept you in the second round in around about October, September of that year. And we were absolutely successful in that regard. Without exception, those boys upped their ante and were able to behave better. So I think what it did was it helped the system, it helped the prep school, and it certainly helped us. The same applied to academics, where there were boys who the prep school had advised us they were not performing to their best ability academically. It was not because of any stumbling blocks in their way academically. They were not living up to what was expected of them. I saw those parents individually with the boys, and I said to them, at this point, I cannot accept you into the high school. You are not performing properly, and you need to up your academic ante. And again, those boys did so, and there was an improvement. And so I would rely on the parents assisting us in that regard, because it's good for you and it's good for us to get the boys to up the ante and to work harder. However, last year and in previous years, we have turned boys down for academic reasons, and we are allowed to only in extreme cases. So if there are boys who have very particular needs that we cannot meet in the high school, you need to remember that the high school has classes of between 30 and 32 boys in a class. It is a rigorous classroom environment. They are teenagers. They're starting to get that boost of hormonal substances into their bodies. They're starting to think in strange ways. They're starting to behave in strange ways. And it is difficult to concentrate in a class like that when you have an academic problem, when you are struggling academically. This is not to say the classes are unruly, by no means. Our school is a very well-controlled environment. But there's pushing and shoving, and there's jostling, and there's teasing, and all the kind of things that happen at that age. And so I would very strongly advise, as I have done last year to certain parents, that they think very carefully about their boy's future in a school environment which is not made for them. Look at a smaller classroom environment. Look at a school that's better set up for special needs, and give your son a chance which he would not get in our kind of school. And so that's the advice we've given those parents. It's not about boys who get 60% or 50% for subjects. Generally, those boys who are working to the best of their ability and trying hard, we will accept. Our history over the last couple of years has been as follows. I'm going to go from 210 to 213, and this will not change. There's no reason for it to change at this point. In 210, there were 102 prep school boys, of which we took 91. We turned down one boy, and 10 of them chose to go to other schools. In 211, there were 104 boys. There were 8 boys turned down, and there are particular reasons for those. 14 boys chose to go elsewhere. In 212, there were 105 boys. 4 boys were turned down. 88 boys were accepted. 13 chose to go to other schools. In 2013, there were 105 boys. In that year, 5 boys were turned down. 91 were accepted. 8 chose to go elsewhere. And so I think you can be certain that it is almost a certainty that your child will get through into the high school unless there are very particular problems which you would already know about because you've had a number of interactions already with the head of grade and over the last couple of years. So there shouldn't be any surprises for anybody. I don't think anybody who applies here would suddenly find themselves turned down and not expect it and not know that it's a possibility. All right, so that's really what I wanted to say at this point. Tony asked me to add in that we gave out packs of applications to the grade 7 parents. Amongst those packs was not a form called the RB3, but if you download the forms from the internet, you will get an RB3 with it. And the RB3 is for boys outside of the prep school, because we interview boys outside of the prep school and we need to know something from their headmasters. I get a lot of interaction from Tony and his team. I don't need that form to find out about the boys in the prep school. So the RB3 is not required from prep school parents. That's my story, and if there is anything you'd like to ask me at this point, if I've been unclear on anything or if you're concerned in any way, let's talk about it. Are there any hands? I don't know if I'm seeing a hand at the back there. It's a bit dark. No? Okay. All right. Well, you're very welcome to approach me after the meeting if you'd like to ask me any questions individually. So I think that's it then, Tony. Okay.
Mr. Simpson, thank you very much indeed for that information. I see far more relaxed and group of parents. As much as I tease Shaun, we have a very good relationship, and the schools have an enormously successful relationship. And what Mr. Simpson has told you, particularly about boys who are finding either the academic issues challenging, Mrs. Buck will already have called you this year, and I'm certainly hoping that forever onwards that we will be able to continue to keep that relationship going and the information through to the parents. If there are no further questions, even after what I've said, thank you very, very much for joining us this evening, and please ensure that you submit your application to the high school. Sadly, what Mr. Simpson didn't tell you, annually we've got to remind 20 parents, at least 20, please make sure your application is in because it hasn't been handed in yet. And that puts pressure on everybody. So please can I ask you to let that happen. Mr. Simpson will be here for 5 minutes if there are any questions afterwards, and thank you all very much.